Okay, as I discussed in the previous videos about the stand, I'm going to go into the price comparison for Sump versus the sponge filters. The Sump in the long run is way more expensive. It's a little bit more of a pain in the butt because you do have to drill the tanks, or you have to get either gravity boxes for the overhangs, so you actually get the water from it and go into the sump without drilling, or you need to build a PVC piping kit basically to get the water pumping through. And a lot of people complain that can be a pain in the butt, just because if power goes out or anything like that, sometimes your tanks will overflow because the suction will stop. So breaking it down, I did a lot of research into this, see what was more cost effective, and with my 10-gallon tanks in my basement stay at a constant 68 degrees, so I only need a 50-watt heater to keep them about 72 to 74, or even climb them up to 80 if I need to breed some of the other fish. So you roughly have about $10 a heater I spent. I'm only going to put heaters in 4 of the tanks, so I only got $40. With the sump system, you're going to need to heat a lot more water than that. You're going to need a 300 watt to a 400 watt heater, which is going to cost you anywhere from $40 to $60. So if you buy a cheap of the line submersible heater, it'll run you about the same. The wattage is going to be the same for anything like the sump, usually 300 to 400 watts. But with this only having 4, it's only 200 watts. And what's nice is, yes, it's 200 watts turning on and off, but it's only 50 watts at a time. So it is 100 watts less, and it does take up a little less energy consumption. With the sump, you do need to get either a wet or dry pump. The pumps range anywhere from $100 to $300 for a decent one. You don't want a piece of junk when it comes to filtering 100 gallons of water through your basement or your house. So you definitely don't want to go cheap of the line. So like I said, roughly on average about $200. By the time I bought the air pump, which is a Whisper 100, it cost me $25 on Amazon. With all the different sponge filters, they're $5 a piece. So by the time I do 6 of them, you're looking at about $30. With $25, you're looking at about $55 for the whole setup. Yes, the check valves you do have to get. You do have to get line, any kind of T-valve splits that you need to get. So you roughly add about $15 there. So the price is about 1/3 of what you would spend on just that pump alone. The other bad thing is you do have to get a larger container for water. So I do have a 55-gallon tank laying around, but not everybody does have that I was going to use for my sump. So a 55-gallon tank, if you're to buy cheap of the line on Craigslist, you're looking at about $60. So right there, you're already climbing up and up and up. And this isn't including the 10-gallon tanks. I'm just including that as a stationary object that everybody has. So after you buy that, you do have to buy the PVC piping. You do have to buy the T-valves, either the ball valve joints for the plumbing, and that's just going to climb and climb and climb. Yes, it is an overall better system with the sump because you can control, but the other downfall to it is once one tank gets a disease, all the tanks are going to flow with that disease. And with ick, it's very contagious, affects fish really quickly. Your fish can be healthy and go in 1 second. You add one sick fish if you don't quarantine it right, or it stresses out inside your setup, and boom, your whole system has ick. With these all being on separate sponge filters, it makes life a lot easier. The water changes are going to be a bit of a more of a pain in the butt, but I do have the Python gravel vac, and that's going to suction right out the window that's only about 15 feet away into the yard. So not only am I fertilizing the plants, but it's also a little bit easier to do the water change. I also have a water hookup that will fill these tanks within 5 minutes each. Or I can even just bring the garden hose down here that has been conditioned, so there are no chemicals in it or anything like that can fill the tank. So like I said, the sump system's great. It makes water changes a lot easier. It makes the overall cleanliness of the tanks a lot easier. But the sponge filters I've had no bad luck with ever. When it comes to breeding the fish, it's awesome because the babies don't get sucked up in them. And it also creates a field for different types of food for the baby fry to eat. The beneficial bacteria can grow onto it, and it just makes an overall better thing. With the sump, you do have the option of creating different levels with carbon, any kind of stones to take out, the ammonia nitrate, anything like that. You can also do a plant part of the sump, which will suck out the nitrates and kind of help fertilize the plants in that way, and then you can shoot it back up. But as long as you're doing adequate water changes on these setups, you're not going to have a huge problem with ammonia spikes, nitrate spikes, or anything like that. I'll be doing 50% water changes on these probably every 5 days, so that way to kick them into breeding mode. Plus, I'll have grow out tanks, everything like that. So like I said, if you're looking at doing a sump system, it is going to cost you quite a bit up front. There are downfalls to each system, so I'm not bashing one or the other. I'm just basically laying out the prices for you after I did all the research. I just kind of want to share the information with everybody. So if you're looking to do a sump system, a multi-tank setup, or sponge filters, just look into it. The prices can skyrocket quite a bit. Eventually I probably will do a sump system once I have more tanks set up, but that'll be down the road. So just to break it down, your sponge filter, everything like that, you can just get right off Amazon. I'll have a link down below that you can click to kind of check out the different stuff that I got. And like I said, with the sump system, if you can get stuff off Craigslist and different hobbyists for a little bit cheaper, you can build yourself a nice sump system for pretty cheap. But it's definitely not going to be as cheap as what you can do with an air pump, sponge filters, and overall energy consumption, because with the sponge filters you're only running one air pump, which is going to be a heck of a lot less electricity than what it's going to do to run that pump that you're actually pumping water through the system. So if you're looking to conserve electricity and use up the least amount of electrical sockets as possible, this is definitely the way to go, just because you're going to be using less wattage for your heater, less wattage for the pumps, and you're not going to have to worry about filters overflowing or anything like that. So if you want to do a cheap setup for multi-tanks and you're not doing the most delicate of fish, definitely check out sponge filters and the air pumps versus the sumps. But if you have any input, different tips or tricks, like I said, I'm not bashing, so don't take it that way, but post it down in the comments below, and just kind of help inform people about everything. Thanks.